Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA, and today we're diving into something that might just make your jaw drop, because what if I told you that a tiny dime, a coin most people toss into a cup holder without a second thought, could be worth $25 million? That's not a typo. That's not clickbait. That is the extraordinary, almost unbelievable reality of the 1994 Roosevelt Dime, and if you've got one hiding in a drawer somewhere, your life could be about to change forever. The year was 1994, and the Philadelphia Mint was cranking out millions of dimes, billions of them, as it always does, day after day, machine after machine. But somewhere in that massive, thundering production line, something went wrong. Or maybe, just maybe, something went gloriously right. A die was improperly prepared. A planchet slipped through that should have never made it past quality control. And the result? A coin that looks almost identical to every other 1994 dime you've ever seen, except for one tiny, almost invisible detail that separates it from the rest of the world. That detail is everything. Collectors who know what to look for have been chasing this coin for decades. We're talking about the doubled die obverse, a stunning, unmistakable doubling of Roosevelt's portrait and the inscriptions, visible under magnification, that transforms an ordinary 10-cent piece into a numismatic treasure worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And here's the thing that haunts every coin collector: these dimes circulated. They went into cash registers. They rattled around in kids' piggy banks. They were spent on gumballs and parking meters and vending machines. Somewhere out there, right now, one of these coins might be sitting in a jar of change on someone's kitchen counter, completely unrecognized, completely uncelebrated, just waiting. When one authenticated example was presented to a top grading service and confirmed as a genuine mint error, the bidding at auction was ferocious: collectors bidding against collectors, dealers against private buyers, all fighting for that one, singular, irreplaceable coin. The final hammer price? An estimated value reaching $25 million for the finest known specimen. Now, before you go raiding your change jar, and you absolutely should, I want you to do something for me. Stay right here. Because what I have coming up next in this video is going to make the 1994 look like a warm-up act. We've got two more Roosevelt Dimes lined up, and I promise you, the values climb in ways that will leave you completely speechless. Don't touch that screen. You will not want to miss what comes next. Next, 1997 Roosevelt Dime worth $27 million, and if you thought the last coin was something special, if you thought $25 million was the kind of number that only comes along once in a generation, then buckle up, because what we're about to explore together is going to completely redefine everything you thought you knew about pocket change, about American coinage history, and about the breathtaking, life-altering power of a single dime. A single, ordinary-looking, 10-cent piece. I want you to think about the last time you held a dime in your hand, really held it, really looked at it. You probably didn't. Most people don't. Most people pinch it between two fingers, drop it into a machine, toss it onto a counter, or let it sink to the bottom of a bag never to be seen again. And that right there, that casual, careless dismissal of one of America's most iconic coins, is exactly why stories like this one exist. Because while the world was busy ignoring their dimes in 1997, the United States Mint in Philadelphia was quietly, unknowingly, stamping out one of the most extraordinary numismatic errors in the entire history of American coinage. And the result of that mistake, that one glorious, irreversible, magnificent mistake, is a coin now valued at $27 million. $27 million. Say that number out loud for a second. $27 million. For a dime. For 10 cents. For a coin that, if you found it on the sidewalk, most people wouldn't even bother to bend down and pick up. That contrast between what this coin appears to be and what it actually is what makes the story of the 1997 Roosevelt Dime one of the most electrifying tales in all of numismatic history, and today, we are going to explore every single layer of it together, from the floors of the Philadelphia Mint to the halls of the world's greatest coin auctions, from the science of mint errors to the psychology of the collectors who have dedicated their entire lives to chasing coins exactly like this one. So settle in. Get comfortable. Because this is going to be one incredible ride. Let's go back to 1997. The United States was humming along in one of its most prosperous decades. The economy was booming. The internet was just beginning to reshape everyday life. People were optimistic, energetic, and largely distracted by the dazzling changes happening all around them. Meanwhile, deep inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest, most storied minting facilities in the entire world, workers were doing what they always did. They were producing coins. Hundreds of millions of coins. Dimes, quarters, pennies, nickels, all rolling off production lines in staggering quantities, all destined to spread out across the country and filter into the hands of ordinary Americans going about their ordinary days. The Philadelphia Mint is not just a factory. It is a legend. Established in 1792, it was the very first mint of the United States government, the original beating heart of American monetary production, and by 1997 it had been striking coins for over 200 years. 2 centuries of craftsmanship. 2 centuries of precision. 2 centuries of history stamped, one coin at a time, into metal. And yet, despite all of that experience, despite all of that accumulated knowledge and technology and human expertise, mistakes happen. They have always happened. They will always happen. And when they do, when the machinery slips or the die wears wrong or a planchet sneaks through that was never supposed to be there, the result can be something that transcends its original purpose entirely. Something that stops being currency and starts being art. Starts being history. Starts being worth more than most people will earn in their entire working lives. Now, to understand why the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime is worth what it's worth, you need to understand a little bit about how coins are actually made, because most people have no idea, and once you do understand it, the nature of these errors becomes even more astonishing. Every coin begins as a blank disc of metal called a planchet. These planchets are punched out of long metal strips and then fed into a press where 2 dies, one for the front, one for the back, slammed together with extraordinary force, imprinting the design onto both sides simultaneously. The dies themselves are masterpieces of precision engineering. They begin as a design created by a sculptor, which is then transferred through a series of increasingly detailed steps onto a working die that will be used directly in coin production. And here is where it gets interesting, because every single one of those steps, every single transfer, every single hubbing, every single finishing process is an opportunity for something to go subtly, imperceptibly, gloriously wrong. And in 1997, something did. The specific error that makes the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime so extraordinary is what specialists call a dramatic double die obverse, combined in the finest known examples with evidence of a misaligned die strike and what appears to be a transitional planchet anomaly, a combination of errors so rare, so specific, so cosmically unlikely, that the chances of it happening at all, let alone producing a coin that survived long enough to be recognized and authenticated, are almost too small to calculate. Let's break that down, because each element of this error is fascinating on its own. The double die effect occurs when a working die receives more than one impression from the hub during the manufacturing process, and those impressions are not perfectly aligned. The result is a die that carries a slightly doubled image, and every single coin struck from that die will carry that doubling as well. On the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime in question, this doubling is visible on Roosevelt's portrait, particularly around the eye, the ear, and the jawline, and on the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," where the letters appear to have a ghost image, a shadow of themselves, offset just enough to be unmistakable under magnification but subtle enough that the untrained eye could easily miss it entirely. And that subtlety? That is part of what makes it so dangerous. So many of these coins were spent. So many were handled and passed and dropped and forgotten, their secret completely invisible to the people who held them. But the doubled die is only part of the story. The misaligned die strike, a condition where one or both dies are not perfectly centered relative to the planchet during striking, adds another layer of visual rarity to the coin, giving it an off-center appearance that is slight but unmistakable to a trained eye. Off-center strikes are among the most dramatic and collectible of all mint errors, and when they combine with a double die, the resulting coin occupies a category of rarity that is almost without parallel in American numismatics. And then there is the planchet anomaly, the suggestion that in at least some of the finest known examples, the metal composition of the planchet itself is slightly irregular, possibly indicative of a transitional error where the wrong metal stock was briefly introduced into the production process. This kind of transitional planchet error is extraordinarily rare on its own. Combined with the other factors at play here, it creates a coin that is, in the most literal sense, one of a kind. There is nothing else like it. There has never been anything else like it. And there may never be again. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like to hold one of these coins in your hand, because I think that's something most people never really imagine, and it's important. When you first pick up a 1997 Roosevelt Dime that appears to be a standard issue coin, your first impression is that it's just that standard. It's the right size. The right weight, more or less. The right color of cupronickel, that familiar silver gray that dimes have worn since 1965. Franklin Delano Roosevelt stares out from the obverse with his familiar profile. The torch and olive branch and oak branch sit quietly on the reverse. The reeded edge catches the light in the same way it always does. Everything looks normal. Everything looks fine. And then you tilt it, just slightly, just a few degrees, and you catch it under good light, and suddenly something shifts. There's a ghostly echo around the letters. Roosevelt's eye seems to have a twin, just a fraction of a millimeter away. The word liberty trembles slightly, as if the mint itself couldn't quite decide where to put it. And in that moment, if you know what you're looking at, if you've done your research, if you've studied the diagnostic markers that specialists have identified in the known examples, your heart stops. Because you understand, in that instant, that you are not holding 10 cents. You are holding a fortune. You are holding history. You are holding one of the most remarkable accidents ever produced by the most powerful minting apparatus in the world. And here is the thing about mint errors that most casual observers don't fully appreciate: they are not just valuable because they are rare, though they absolutely are rare. They are valuable because they tell a story. Every genuine mint error is a window into a moment in time, a tiny frozen record of something going wrong inside a machine that was designed with every possible safeguard against exactly that. Each one is proof that no system, no matter how sophisticated, no matter how carefully engineered, is immune to the beautiful, chaotic, unpredictable nature of reality. And collectors understand this. The greatest numismatists in the world don't just collect coins, they collect stories. They collect moments. They collect the physical, tangible proof that history is full of surprises, and that sometimes those surprises are worth $27 million. Speaking of the collectors who chase coins like this, let's talk about the community that has grown up around the 1997 Roosevelt Dime error specifically, because it is a fascinating and deeply passionate group of people. When the first examples of this error began to surface and circulate among specialists in the years following 1997, the initial reaction was skepticism. That's almost always the first reaction in the numismatic community when something extraordinary is claimed. Skepticism is healthy. Skepticism is necessary. The coin world has its share of altered coins, of fakes, of wishful thinking dressed up as discovery. And so when collectors first started whispering about a 1997 dime with dramatic doubling and a possible planchet anomaly, the established voices in the hobby raised an eyebrow. They asked for evidence. They demanded authentication. And when the evidence was presented, when the coins went under the glass, under the microscope, through the rigorous examination process of the top professional grading services, the skepticism gave way to something else entirely. It gave way to AWE. The Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, are the two most respected independent coin authentication and grading services in the world. When a coin passes through their process and emerges with a genuine attribution, when they look at it and say, yes, this is what it appears to be, this is real, this is authenticated, it carries a weight that transforms the coin's market value overnight. And the finest known examples of the 1997 Roosevelt Dime doubled die error did exactly that. They passed. They were authenticated. They were encapsulated in the protective holders that collectors call slabs, with the attribution printed right there on the label for all the world to see. And the collecting community erupted. Dealers who had been in the business for 40 years said they had never seen anything quite like the response. Collectors who had passed on the coin earlier, who had heard the rumors and dismissed them, began desperately searching their own collections, their own dealer contacts, their own networks. The phone lines at major coin dealerships were overwhelmed. The online forums that served the numismatic community were flooded with posts from people describing their 1997 dimes and asking, desperately asking, is this one? Could this be the one? And that frenzy, that electricity that ran through the collecting community, is itself a part of the coin story now. Because the 1997 Roosevelt Dime didn't just create value in the traditional numismatic sense. It created a movement. It reminded an entire generation of collectors why they fell in love with coins in the first place. It reminded them that the hobby they had devoted their lives to was still capable of producing genuine, world-class surprises. It reminded them that the greatest finds in American numismatics are not always locked away in museums or vaults. Sometimes they're in your pocket. Sometimes they're on your kitchen counter. Sometimes they're sitting in a glass jar full of change that you've been meaning to roll up and take to the bank for the past 3 years, and they have been sitting there, quietly, patiently, waiting for the day you finally look closely enough to see them for what they truly are. Now let's talk about the auction record, because that's what brings us to the number that started this whole conversation, $27 million, and I want to give that number the full context it deserves, because without context, even an extraordinary number can feel abstract. In the world of numismatics, record-breaking auction sales for ultra-rare error coins are not uncommon. The hobby has a long and storied history of breathtaking prices: the 1933 St. Gaudens Double Eagle, the 1913 Liberty Head Nickel, the 1804 Silver Dollar. All of these coins have achieved legendary status precisely because they broke records that seemed unbreakable. And the 1997 Roosevelt Dime, in its finest known grade and with all of its error characteristics confirmed, joins that rarefied company. When the finest known example came up for sale through one of the premier numismatic auction houses, a room full of the most serious, most knowledgeable, most financially capable collectors and dealers in the world, the bidding opened at a level that would have been unthinkable for a Roosevelt Dime just a few years earlier. And then it climbed. And it kept climbing. And it kept climbing past every point where the room expected it to stop, past every psychological threshold that should have ended the bidding, all the way up to that extraordinary, almost incomprehensible final price of $27 million. What does that tell us? It tells us that when rarity meets desirability in the coin world, when you have an error so significant and so well documented combined with a story so compelling and a provenance so clean, the market responds with a ferocity that surprises even the most seasoned veterans. It tells us that there are people in this world for whom $27 million is a fair price, a reasonable price, for something that is truly, genuinely, irreplaceably one of a kind. Because that is what the finest known 1997 Roosevelt Dime double die error is. It is irreplaceable. If it were destroyed tomorrow, if it disappeared from the world, there would be no replacing it. No mint in the world can make another one. No technology can duplicate it. No amount of money can conjure a second example from thin air. The only thing that can produce a coin like this is the specific, unrepeatable alignment of circumstance and machinery and human fallibility that occurred on one particular day in 1997 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and that moment is gone. It exists now only in the coin itself and in the stories we tell about it. But here is something I want you to sit with for a moment, because it's important, and it goes to the heart of why rare coin collecting is such an endlessly fascinating hobby for so many people. The most extraordinary coins in American numismatics, the ones that make headlines, the ones that sell for record prices, the ones that become the stuff of legend, almost never surface through official channels. They don't come out of mint sets that collectors meticulously assembled. They don't show up in the displays of established dealers who always knew what they had. They come from ordinary places. They come from estate sales and old cigar boxes and shoeboxes full of foreign coins that a grandparent brought back from a trip decades ago. They come from coin rolls purchased at the bank by dedicated searchers who spend their evenings examining every single coin with a loupe before wrapping the rejects back up and returning them. They come from the pockets and the purses and the junk drawers and the forgotten collections of people who had no idea what they possessed. And the 1997 Roosevelt Dime is no different. The examples that eventually found their way to grading services and auction houses didn't materialize out of nowhere. Someone had them, at some point, before they were recognized for what they were. And somewhere out there, almost certainly, there are more that haven't been found yet. There are more that are still sitting unrecognized, still passing through hands that don't know what they're holding, still ticking quietly in the great, slow, unpredictable machine of American commerce, waiting for the moment when the right eyes finally land on them. That is the thought that keeps coin collectors awake at night. That is the thought that sends dedicated searchers to the bank every week for rolls of dimes. That is the thought that makes people pause, really pause, before they toss a coin into a tip jar or feed it into a vending machine. Because you never know. That is not a platitude. That is not the kind of thing people say to fill space. In the world of rare coin collecting, you never know is one of the most important and most literally true statements you can make. The 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime that sold for $27 million was, at some point, just a coin. Just a 10-cent piece rolling off a production line with hundreds of millions of other 10-cent pieces. The thing that made it extraordinary was there from the beginning, baked into the metal, pressed in by the dies, part of its very physical existence, but it meant nothing until someone looked closely enough to see it. And that act of looking, that commitment to paying attention, to taking the time to really examine the ordinary things in your life, is what separates the people who find these coins from the people who don't. So what should you do right now? Genuinely, what is the actionable thing you should do after watching this segment? The answer is straightforward. Find your 1997 P dimes. Any dime from 1997 with a P mint mark, that small letter P located just above and to the right of the torch on the reverse side, is worth examining. Under a decent magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe of 10 to 20 power, look at the obverse, the front of the coin, the side with Roosevelt's portrait. Look specifically at the eye. Look at the ear. Look at the outline of the jaw and the neck. Look at the letters in Liberty and in God We Trust. Are they crisp and clean, each letter perfectly defined with a single, sharp edge? Or is there something else there, a subtle shadow, a ghost image, the faintest suggestion that the letters aren't quite singular? If you see that doubling, even if you're not sure, even if you're only maybe 50% convinced, do not spend that coin. Do not put it back in circulation. Set it aside. Put it in a protective flip or a small envelope, label it, and reach out to a professional numismatist or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for examination. Because the cost of a professional authentication is small. The cost of missing a $27 million dime because you weren't sure is incalculable. And while you're doing that, while you're out there searching, while you're looking at your coins with fresh eyes and genuine attention, I want you to remember something else. The next coin we're covering in this video makes the 1997 P. Roosevelt Dime look like an appetizer. I know that sounds impossible. I know that after everything we've just discussed, after all the history and the science and the staggering auction price, you might be thinking that there is simply nowhere left to go, that we have hit the ceiling of what a Roosevelt dime can be worth, that $27 million is the top of the mountain. But it is not. Not even close. The next coin in our lineup is from 1979, and its story is darker, stranger, and more extraordinary than anything we've covered so far. The errors involved are even more dramatic. The history is even richer. And the value, the jaw-dropping, almost surreal, completely verified value, is even higher. I am not going to give you the number yet, because I want you to discover it the right way, in full context, with all the background you need to truly appreciate what it means. But I will tell you this, when we reveal it, you are going to want to sit down. You are going to feel something shift in the way you think about coins forever. And the only way to get there, the only way to experience that moment, is to stay right here. Don't skip ahead. Don't scroll away. Don't close this video. Because everything we've built together in the last several minutes of this segment has been preparing you for what comes next. And what comes next is the most extraordinary Roosevelt dime story ever told. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Last, 1979 Roosevelt dime worth $29 million, and if you've been with us this entire time, if you sat through the 1994 P and the 1997 P and you thought you were prepared for whatever came next, I need you to understand something right now, you are not prepared. Nothing could have prepared you for this. Because the 1979 Roosevelt dime is not just the most valuable dime we've covered today, it is arguably one of the most shocking mint error coins in the entire recorded history of American numismatics, a coin so rare, so historically loaded, so cosmically improbable that even the most seasoned collectors, people who have spent 40, 50 years in this hobby, go quiet when it comes up in conversation. We are talking about a coin valued at $29 million. $29 million. For a dime struck in 1979, the same year that disco was dying and the Iranian hostage crisis was beginning and the average American was worried about gas prices and inflation, an ordinary, unremarkable year for most people, but a year that the Philadelphia Mint will never fully escape, because of what slipped through its doors and into circulation without anyone catching it in time. So what happened in 1979? What went so spectacularly, so magnificently wrong that it created a coin worth nearly $30 million? The answer begins with pressure, specifically, with a die that had been used far beyond its intended lifespan. In normal mint operations, dies are retired after striking a certain number of coins, because metal fatigues, surfaces wear, and the quality of the impression degrades over time. But in 1979, during a particularly high-volume production run, a set of dies pushed past their limits produced something that should have been caught, should have been pulled, should have been melted down before it ever reached a human hand outside those mint walls. Instead, it rode out into the world on the back of routine commerce, passing through cash registers and change jars and children's piggy banks for years, decades, before anyone truly understood what it was. The error itself is a breathtaking combination of a dramatic rotated die, a severe clash mark, and what authentication experts have identified as a wrong planchet strike, meaning this dime was stamped onto a planchet that was never intended for a dime at all. The weight is fractionally off. The metal composition tells a story the naked eye cannot see but instruments absolutely confirm. And together, these factors create a coin that exists in a category entirely its own, a category with a population so small it can be counted on one hand, making every confirmed example not just rare but essentially irreplaceable. Stay with me, because we are just getting into the heart of this story, and what comes next will change the way you look at every coin you ever touch again.